The river stretched endlessly under the pale glow of the moon, its surface smooth as glass. A single wooden boat rocked gently at the shore, tethered to a post. Beyond it, the dark forest loomed, whispering with the wind. Rada stepped onto the boat, her bare feet pressing against the damp wood. She turned, watching Shama secure their bags. His hands moved with practiced ease, but his shoulders were stiff, his movements mechanical. Something was off. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. Shama barely looked at her. "It's just for one night. We'll cross at sunrise." Rada nodded, though uncertainty coiled inside her. They had planned this trip for months, but this, sleeping in a boat under an open sky, had never been part of it. The last-minute detour, the unspoken tension, it was all unraveling too fast. They settled into the boat, side by side, yet somehow miles apart. The river lapped softly against the hull, filling the silence between them. Rada watched the stars, trying to lose herself in their quiet brilliance, but her mind refused to rest. "Shama," she said finally, turning toward him. "What's wrong?" He exhaled, long and slow. "Nothing." A single word, yet it carried weight. He wasn't the same man who had once held her hand so tightly, who had promised her a future built on trust and love. She shifted, drawing her knees to her chest. "You've been different lately." Shama rubbed his temples, his jaw tightening. "You're imagining things." Rada's chest ached. Maybe she was. Maybe the long journey had drained them both. Maybe she was reading too much into his distant stares, his quick glances at his phone, the way his grip on her hand had loosened over time. But then it happened. His phone vibrated. Shama flinched. It was brief, barely noticeable, but Rada caught it. His hand darted to his pocket, silencing the device before she could glimpse the screen. A chill ran through her. "Who is it?" Shama forced a smile. "No one important." Rada studied his face. The way his lips curved, but his eyes remained vacant. The way his fingers tapped anxiously against his knee. The way the silence between them suddenly felt heavier than it ever had. A slow realization crept into her bones. Something was wrong. And for the first time, she feared she already knew the answer. She turned back to the sky, feigning indifference, but her heart pounded against her ribs. The boat swayed gently beneath them, the river carrying them into the unknown. "Shama," she whispered, barely loud enough to be heard over the water. "Are you hiding something from me?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then, just as she turned to look at him, he let out a breath and muttered, "Get some sleep, Rada." But neither of them did. The boat rocked gently, cradled by the slow-moving current. The night air was thick with the scent of damp wood and river mist. Rada sat motionless, her arms wrapped around herself, listening to the steady rhythm of water lapping against the hull. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a lonely sound, swallowed quickly by silence. Shama lay beside her, eyes closed, but Rada knew he wasn't asleep. His breathing was too controlled, his body too still. She wanted to shake him, to demand answers, but something held her back. Fear, perhaps, or the quiet dread of confirming what she already suspected. Instead, she whispered, "Who keeps calling you?" Shama didn't react at first. Then, with a sigh, he turned onto his side, facing away from her. "No one," he murmured. "A lie." Rada clenched her jaw. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make me feel like I'm imagining things." Shama exhaled sharply. "You're overthinking again, Rada." His voice was soft but edged with irritation, as if she were an inconvenience. The words stung. He used to love the way her mind worked, how she noticed the smallest details, how she cared too much. But now, it was a flaw, something to dismiss, to silence. She turned away, staring at the river, watching the moonlight shimmer on its surface. The water looked peaceful, but she knew better. Beneath that calm exterior, unseen currents twisted and pulled. Much like Shama. His phone vibrated again. This time, he didn't bother silencing it. Rada's heart pounded as she stole a glance. A name flashed on the screen, just a single letter, S. Her stomach twisted. Before she could stop herself, she asked, "Who is S?" Shama tensed. Just for a second. Just enough to confirm everything. A friend. Another lie. Rada inhaled deeply, willing herself to stay calm. And does this friend know about me? Shama didn't answer right away. The pause stretched between them, fragile as glass. Then, finally, he muttered, "Not everything is about you, Rada." A cold numbness spread through her chest. He hadn't denied it. She curled her fingers against the wooden planks beneath her, grounding herself. She could feel the story shifting, the perfect love she thought they had unraveling thread by thread. The river rocked them gently, indifferent to the turmoil inside her. Somewhere in the darkness, the wind picked up, rustling the trees. A storm was coming, not just in the sky, but between them. Rada swallowed hard and whispered, "I think it is." Shama said nothing. But the silence was answer enough. The night felt colder now. The wind had picked up, whispering through the reeds along the riverbank. Rada sat stiffly, her fingers clenched into fists, her pulse thudding in her ears. Shama's silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. She couldn't take it anymore. Reaching forward, she snatched his phone before he could react. "Rada, don't!" Shama lunged for it, but she twisted away, her hands trembling as she stared at the screen. A message flashed under the name S. "Did you tell her yet? Tomorrow is our day, Redheart." Rada's breath hitched. The blood drained from her face. The words blurred, but their meaning struck with razor-sharp clarity. She looked up, eyes burning. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." Shama ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. "It's complicated. Complicated." The word felt like a slap. Complicated. Rada's voice wavered, but fury bled through. "You've been planning this. You were going to leave me." Shama swallowed hard, shifting uncomfortably. "I didn't want to hurt you." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "You didn't want to hurt me?" She shook her head. "Then what was this, Shama? What were we?" His gaze dropped. For the first time, he looked ashamed. But shame wasn't enough. Not after everything. She had given him her heart, her trust, her dreams. And he had spent the entire journey preparing to break them. The boat swayed slightly as she rose to her feet. The river, once soothing, now felt endless and cruel. "Who is she?" Rada's voice was barely a whisper. Shama hesitated. "Someone I met before you." A fresh wave of betrayal crashed over her. "Before me?" Her chest tightened. "So this was all a lie?" "No," he said quickly, standing now, as if that single word could undo everything. "I loved you, Rada. I still." "Don't." She held up a hand, cutting him off. "Don't say that. Not when you've already chosen someone else." Shama looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a split second she saw regret flicker in his eyes. But regret didn't change the truth. It didn't erase the messages, the secrecy, the betrayal. Rada took a shaky breath. The boat rocked beneath her feet, but she felt steadier than she had in hours. Maybe even in months. She had her answer. And for the first time, she realized she didn't need anything else from him. A gust of wind sent ripples across the water. The sky remained dark, but in the distance, a faint glow hinted at dawn. She turned away from him, her heart heavy yet strangely light. Without another word, she stepped toward the edge of the boat, ready to leave. And Shama didn't stop her. Rada stepped off the boat, her feet sinking slightly into the damp riverbank. The air was cool, laced with the scent of earth and water, and for the first time in hours, she felt like she could breathe. The river behind her whispered in the dark, carrying away the last remnants of a love that had never been real. Shama remained in the boat, watching her with unreadable eyes. He didn't call her name. He didn't ask her to stay. And that, more than anything, told her everything she needed to know. She turned to face him one last time. The moonlight cast sharp shadows across his face, making him look almost unfamiliar. Maybe he always had been. Maybe she had only ever seen the version of him she wanted to believe in. "I hope she's worth it," she said, her voice steady. Shama flinched, just slightly, but he said nothing. His silence was his confession, his final betrayal. Rada inhaled deeply, letting the night air fill her lungs. She had spent so much time fearing this moment, dreading the heartbreak. But now that it was here, she didn't feel shattered. She felt lighter, as if by walking away, she was shedding the weight of a love that had never truly been hers. She turned and started walking. The path ahead was uneven, the earth damp beneath her steps, but she moved forward without hesitation. Each step felt like a quiet act of defiance, a declaration that she would not break. Not for him. Not for anyone who didn't choose her the way she had chosen them. Behind her, the boat rocked gently, still tethered to the shore. She didn't look back. The first hints of dawn touched the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold. A new day. A new beginning. She had spent the night lost in darkness, drowning in betrayal. But as she stepped into the light, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was free.